Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1426A, and today's date is November 15th, 2017, and the title of the episode is The Global Economic System is on the Verge of Imploding on Itself. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we've been watching different bubbles around the world where they reached all-time highs, and now they're starting to pop. We're seeing it in the UK, we're seeing it in Canada, we're even seeing it here in the United States, we're even seeing it in Australia, but now we're seeing it in Sweden. Sweden's property bubble most likely is the world's biggest, and it really doesn't get that much coverage in the mainstream media. Now, we know the mainstream media, the corporate media, they like to leave out certain important aspects of what is going on around the world. If they feel that if they leave it out, then they're not really lying about it. They're not really handing out fake news. They just didn't report on it. And what we're seeing here is that this bubble, well, it's not new. In March 2016, Moody's issued a very explicit warning that Sweden's negative interest rates were propagating an unsustainable housing bubble. Now, this is very interesting because we are seeing the same type of housing bubbles occur in the UK, Australia, throughout Europe, seeing it in Canada, the United States, and it's happening everywhere. And what we're seeing right now is that this ultra-loose monetary policy, well, they've created all these bubbles, and this is what central banks do. And this asset bubble, this housing asset bubble that they created, it is unsustainable. And it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, what's very interesting about this is that back in 1995, they created a department called the Price Stability Department, where they were going to control housing prices. And since 1995, the housing prices index went from like 75 all the way up to 450. And the line is just straight up. It's basically a housing bubble type of graph, and it really took off, yes, right after the housing crisis of 2008. Now, it started to move up very, very quickly from 1995 up to 2008, but right after 2008, boom, it just shot straight up. And what we're seeing right now is that Swedes are turning less optimistic on the housing market. And after figures, it suggests that a long run of price rises may be coming to an end, and the authorities there, the financial institutions there, they are very worried about this. And this is not the only country that this is happening in. We're seeing it happen in many different countries. Here in the United States, they're telling us that the unemployment rate is like 4.1%. And if this is true, why is everything contracting? Retail is contracting right now. They're trying to, convince us, and we'll talk about this in a minute, that retail is doing fine and we're seeing an improvement, but we'll get into those numbers in just a bit. But think about this for a second. As unemployment came down, and they're telling us that we're at full employment and everyone has a job and everything is great, why have the real average hourly earnings declined for three straight months in a row? And since the financial crisis, wages have declined since. Now, when we saw more and more individuals get jobs, this is going back to 95 all the way up to 2007. More people were getting jobs, and people had jobs, and to entice people to move over to these other jobs, well, they had to pay them more because there was no one out there. Right now, they're telling us that they can't find people to fill these jobs. We should see wages increasing, not decreasing. And we don't see that. We see the opposite happening. And if everyone has a job and the unemployment rate is at 4.1%, I don't care if they give us 2%. We know this is a manipulated number. We already talked about how this is done. We would see retail expanding. We would see a 1-to-1 ratio that the brick and mortar sales are moving to the online sales. And they would say, holy crap, the entire retail market, it is on fire. We're not seeing that. What we're seeing is the brick and mortar stores implode on themselves, and it's not translating to the online sales area. A little bit of it is, but not much. Now they're trying to convince us that retail is doing better. Now September, they revised the numbers. The retail numbers came at 1.6. They pushed them up to 1.9%. And now they're telling us that retail is growing by 4.6%. Remember how the government gets these numbers. These are not numbers directly from the retailers. They make guesses. And if they don't like what the retailers actually give them, they change them. And think about this even further. We're having store after store declare bankruptcy. We're having stores closed down. Radio Shack gone. JCPenney's closing down. Macy's closed stores. Limited closed stores. Aeropostale closed stores. All these stores are closing. We're not seeing a 1-to-1 ratio where all the sales are now moving to online. They're telling us that since, 2015 to right now, retail sales are doing better than ever. Does that make any sense? No, it doesn't. This is fake, phony, and false. When a store closes down and they are no longer making sales and they close down, let's say, in March, what the government does is they take these numbers and they spread them out over the whole entire year. And they make it seem like that they're still making sales. And remember, gas sales are included with this. Automobile sales are included with this. And people aren't using their own money to purchase automobiles. They're taking out loans. And we know what's happening with the automobile market. Well, that's starting to stall. And we know how they get the sales from automobiles. Once they channel stuff into the lots, that is called a sale. Not when the person purchased the automobile, when the dealership receives the automobile on the lot. That is a sale. Strip all that out. Strip out autos. Strip out fuel. We're seeing sales were only up around 0.1% in the month, which completely missed expectations. And what we're seeing here is all of this is manipulated to make us believe that everything is fine. I mean, think about it. They're forecasting 8,000 stores closing this year. And if you look around your neighborhood and you look at some of the strip malls, you can see a lot of stores have completely disappeared. And when you go to the malls, you can see there's not many people in the malls. Well, this time of year it might be picking up because the holiday season is coming. But I'm going to tell you right now, this holiday season is going to be a complete and utter disaster. And remember, online sales only make up 10% of the entire retail market, which is $1 trillion market. So when they tell you, oh, look, Amazon, they received, 1.3 billion worth of sales, that's just a tiny little piece of it. That's it. So we can see already that this entire global economic system, it is imploding on itself. We're seeing bubbles pop all over the place, and they're trying to keep the manipulation moving forward here to make everyone believe that everything is fine. We talked about inflation and how we're going to start to see inflation rise, and we're already starting to see signs of this. Core consumer prices have come in hot. They have risen at the fastest rate in 6 months. And we can see right now that this is being pushed up. We're going to see inflation even go higher. And as the dollar is no longer accepted, I'm talking about the petrodollar, out in the Middle East, where they don't have to use it to purchase oil in, Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, Libya, and the rest, and they use other currency, this is going to be a big problem. We're going to see a lot of those dollars rush back to the United States. That means there's going to be a lot of currency in circulation, which means the dollar is going to be devalued, which means it takes a lot more of those dollars to buy the products. When the Fed pushed QE, they kept it within their own internal system and pushed inflation out to other countries. We see the Empire Fed, it has tumbled the most in 7 months. And we see already that manufacturing is hurting. Actually, if we look under the covers, prices paid have dropped, number of employees have dropped, average work week contracted, and it's the first contraction since January. All this hype when Trump was elected president, it's starting to fade away. And here we are entering the holiday season. We had a terrible housing market for the summer season. We're heading into the winter. It's going to get worse. If the Fed raises rates, it's going to affect a lot of things. We're going to see the yield curve flatten even further. We're going to see mortgages decline. We're going to see automobile loans decline. We're going to see a lot of things hit at once. And all the bubbles around the world are starting to pop. And like I said, the central banks, the Fed, the ECB, they're stuck. They're backed into a corner. They can't raise rates. They can't lower rates. They're already doing stimulus. So they need something else to happen here to explain why the economy is falling apart. And they just might have that event ready to go. So you need to be ready and prepared. You need to be stocked up with food. You need to have cash on hand. You need some gold and silver. You need water. You need a weapon to protect yourself and your family. You might even, if you can afford it, take on some more food to help your neighbor. And this is not about scaring people. This is about being prepared. I mean, if I told you there was a hurricane coming or some type of disaster headed our way, storm, earthquake, and I told you to get food, told you to get water, you would do it because you said, okay, look, I could see it out there. It's far away right now, but I better prepare. I better have all these things ready. That's all I'm saying. Let's say this doesn't even happen, or the storm doesn't even hit. Well, you have extra food, you have your cash, you have your gold. You really haven't lost anything. You can use all of this, but you're going to use it later on because the storm is coming. The system is breaking down. It's collapsing very, very quickly. Yes, the corporate media is not reporting on it. Everyone's pretending everything is fine. They did this back in 2008. Everyone pretended everything was great. Everyone pretended that the subprime securities were AAA. Everyone pretended everything. I mean, look at the people that worked in Enron. They thought they had a job for life. Nothing wrong. Look at the people in Lehman. They thought they had a job for life in Lehman. It all fell apart in a split second. That's all it took. One split second. And nobody even knew about it. They had no idea it was coming. 2008 crisis, many people had no clue. I'm talking about millions and millions of people had no clue what was coming. They were still purchasing homes, speculating. And the whole thing just fell apart in a couple of seconds. And no one knew what to do. This time around, we've been tracking it. We've been following it. We know what's coming. We know exactly what's headed our way. It doesn't matter what the corporate media says. It doesn't matter what the stock market's doing. Because if you look back in time, corporate media was telling us that everything was great. Corporate media was telling us that the stock market was hitting 14,000 points. The Fed was telling us there was no recession. Everything was contained. They were telling all of us all of this. And if you believe them, you would think there was nothing wrong. And then all of a sudden, snap of a fingers in October, everything came crashing down. We're going to see the same thing happen. It doesn't take that long to pop a balloon. Think about it. To blow up a balloon, it takes a little while. To pop it, it takes a second. That's what we're going to see in this economy. Not just here in the U.S., but globally. So get prepared. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.